Bram Stoker's Dracula arrived on screens in November of 1992. The movie was met with mostly positive reviews, with many critics praising Gary Oldman's performance and Francis Ford Coppola's vision of Dracula. The movie was produced on a large budget of $40 million and grossed over $215 million worldwide, making it a commercial success. It won 3 Academy Awards for sound editing, makeup and costume design. Winona Ryder had originally brought the script to the attention of Francis Coppola. She had dropped out of The Godfather Part 3 at the last minute, leaving Francis in a bit of trouble and having to cast his own daughter Sophia instead, which led to the movie being heavily criticised. Winona was supposed to play the daughter Mary. Not wanting to hold a grudge against Winona, Francis happily agreed to read the script, and being a fan of the source material, he got on board. There were many incarnations of Dracula since Bram Stoker's book was published, but hardly any of them attempted to do a faithful adaptation of the book. The 1922 film Nosferatu was an unauthorised adaptation of the book, with names and other details changing because the studio could not obtain the rights to the novel. For instance, Vampire became Nosferatu, and Count Dracula became Count Orlok. Stoker's heirs sued over the adaptation, and a court ruling ordered that all copies of the film be destroyed. However, one print of Nosferatu survived, and the film came to be regarded as an influential masterpiece of cinema. Francis wanted to break away from the traditional imagery we had been so used to over the years, but didn't completely avoid homaging them in certain parts of the movie. He takes what works and weaves it into his own design. Coppola chose to invest a significant amount of the budget into the costumes in order to showcase the actors and to help transport the audience to that time period. Hardly any of the scenes were on location, everything was pretty much shot at MGM Studios. He was really trying to attempt the old school methods of filmmaking and simulate how things would have been done at the time. He had an artist storyboard the entire film in advance to carefully illustrate each planned shot, a process which created around 1,000 images. He turned the drawings into choppy animated film and added music over the top. He showed the animated movie to his designers to give them an idea of the mood and theme he was aiming for. Gary Oldman plays Count Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler. Gary was already getting the attention of the critics and filmmakers at this point for his incredible acting abilities, leaving a strong impression on many with his performances in Sid and Nancy and JFK. Gary plays many variations of Dracula throughout the film, all the different disguises of the vampire from the old Count to the devil persona. Winona Ryder as Mina Harker and Elisabetta. Winona, who at this point I already knew from Beetlejuice, plays the love interest of Keanu's character Jonathan and Dracula. Anthony Hopkins plays Professor Abraham Van Helsing, also the priest from the past, which could imply his family could have been hunting Dracula throughout the centuries, and is also the principal narrator throughout the film, which fits nicely within the original story of the book, which told its narrative in diary form. The story already implies he is an experienced vampire hunter. He often comes across as quite eccentric, but nonetheless is confident to lead them on their mission to defeat the Count. Keanu Reeves plays Jonathan Harker. Keanu was already well known for his performance in the Bill and Ted films, but was heavily criticised by critics for his very poor English accent. He heads to Transylvania to help Dracula purchase property in London. Francis Ford Coppola loved Richard E. Grant in Withnail and I, and cast him as Dr. Jack Seward. Seward is the former student of Van Helsing. Carrie Ells stars as Sir Arthur Holmwood. Carrie, I'm sure everyone knows from The Princess Bride. Billy Campbell plays Quincy. Billy, who to me and many others is the Rocketeer. Sadie Frost was cast as Lucy, who is the close friend of Mina and is the love interest of Quincy, Holmwood and Dr. Seward. She becomes the first victim of Dracula. Tom Waits plays Renfield, who was the Count's previous solicitor, but appears to have gone mad in the eyes of Dr. Seward, but is actually under the influence of Dracula. The movie opens in 1462, with the prologue being narrated by Van Helsing. Vlad Dracula, or Vlad the Impaler, as he is often referred to, is a member of the Order of the Dragon that heads out to battle the Turks. He returns home to find his wife, Elisabetta, has committed suicide after receiving a false report of his death. Angered that his wife is now damned for committing suicide in the eyes of the Lord, Dracula desecrates his chapel and renounces God, declaring that he will rise from the grave to avenge Elisabetta. With all the powers of darkness, he stabs the cross with his sword and drinks the blood which pours out of it. In 1897, a newly qualified solicitor, Jonathan Harker, takes the Transylvanian Count Dracula as a client from his colleague R.M. Renfield, who has gone insane and been locked up. Jonathan travels to Transylvania to arrange Dracula's real estate acquisition in London, including Carfax Abbey. Jonathan meets Dracula, who discovers a picture of Harker's fiancée, Mina, and believes that she is the reincarnation of Elisabetta. Dracula demands Jonathan stay there for a month and won't accept no as an answer. He leaves Jonathan to be raped and fed upon by his brides, and sails to England with the boxes of his own native soil, which helps him retain his powers. He takes up residence at Carfax Abbey. His arrival is foretold by the ravings of Renfield, who is now in the care of Dr. Jack Seward, in the asylum which is directly opposite Carfax Abbey. Upon arrival in London, Dracula emerges as a wolf-like creature amid a fierce thunderstorm and hypnotically seduces, then bites and rapes Lucy, with whom Mina is staying with while Jonathan is in Transylvania. Lucy's deteriorating health and behavioural changes prompts Lucy's former suitors, Quincy Morris and Dr. Seward, along with her fiancé Arthur Homewood, to summon Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, who recognises Lucy as the victim of a vampire. Dracula appears as his younger self during daylight, but his powers aren't as strong. He encounters Mina and begins to charm her. Meanwhile, Jonathan manages to escape from his castle and finds a convent nearby, where he recovers his strength and contacts Mina. She travels to Romania to marry him, but previously informs Dracula that she is leaving to be with Jonathan. He is heartbroken, and in his fury he transforms Lucy into a vampire. Van Helsing and his fellow gentlemen head to Lucy's grave to kill Lucy out of mercy the following night. Jonathan and Mina return to London and tell Van Helsing that Dracula is hiding at Carfax Abbey. They locate and destroy the Count's boxes of soil. Meanwhile, Dracula confesses to Mina that he murdered Lucy and has been terrorising her friends. Mina is upset and angry with him, but admits that she still loves him and remembers her previous life as Elisabetta. At her insistence, Dracula begins transforming her into a vampire so that they can be together forever. When you watch Dracula, you will be instantly impressed with the visual effects. You'll be left wondering, how did they do that? Francis Ford Coppola was insistent that he did not want to use any current state-of-the-art visual effects in his movie, instead wishing to use antiquated effects techniques from the early history of cinema. He initially hired a standard visual effects team, but they kept pushing him to go with more modern techniques, and they believed a lot of the effects he wanted to achieve would be difficult without the aid of computer technology, which was really starting to take off at that point. Coppola disagreed with the team and fired them, replacing them with his son, Roman Coppola. As a result, all the visual effects seen in the film were achieved using on-set and in-camera methods, instead of optical or computer-generated effects. For example, any sequence that would have typically required the use of compositing with an optical printer were instead achieved by either rear projection, with actors placed in front of a screen with an image projected behind them, or through multiple exposures by shooting a background slate, then rewinding the film through the camera and shooting the foreground slate on the same piece of film, all the while using matte techniques to ensure that only the desired areas of film were exposed. Forced perspectives were often employed to combine miniature effects or matte paintings with full-sized elements, or create distorted views of reality, such as holding the camera upside down or at odd angles to create the effect of objects defying the laws of physics. Unfortunately, the effects team wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award. The score to Dracula is absolutely beautiful. The love theme for Dracula and Mina is very moving and effective every time the music appears in the background. It helps give a lot of weight to those scenes. The music has that classic opera feel to it and helps set the mood for those gothic set designs. The main theme for the film has been used for many trailers over the years. It was used in 12 Monkeys, Pirates of the Caribbean, Demolition Man, Underworld, What Lies Beneath, and the third Mummy film. The end titles had a pop song attached by Annie Lennox. A music video was produced and it reached number 3 in the UK singles charts. I quite liked the song and it seemed to fit well with the other existing music. I'm not really a fan of movies where they throw in a random pop song at the end, but for Dracula it works well. The CD release is a bit disappointing. It's one of those early CD masters that always sounded very quiet. You come across them a lot if you bought CDs in the late 80s and early 90s. There was a lot of compression to fit them on the CD down to the software used at the time, so the volume needs to be whacked up to 11 to get anything out of it. The score hasn't been re-released or remastered over the years, so it's the same compressed release. It definitely needs to have its audio levels sorted out because I'd love to hear the music in its full fidelity. During a time when making movies into video games was very much common practice, Dracula also got the same treatment. The game based on the movie was released on the Game Boy, NES, Game Gear, Sega Master System, Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, Amiga, PC, sega-cd, and even got a pinball game. Most of them are your standard platform games that were pretty much identical across the board, apart from the PC, Amiga and sega-cd versions. You play as Jonathan as you make your way through the castle, and then end up in London. You'd bump into Van Helsing, who would pass on different weapons for you to use. The games were not received favourably at the time. They play very much like a poor man's version of the Castlevania series. The PC version was a first-person shooter, looking very much like Wolfenstein and Hexen. You spend most of the time walking around the castle grounds. I played it briefly as a kid and got bored of it very quickly, despite it looking pretty impressive for the time. The Sega CD version incorporated FMV sequences from the film, and as usual on those Sega CD games, the footage looked garbage. It was released exclusively in North America, which is probably a good thing because it was utter rubbish. Surprisingly, money was spent on advertising in TV commercials. The player controls Jonathan Harper again, as he travels through 7 stages that are based on scenes from the film. You walk around punching and kicking mostly bats and insects. Players complained of the awful gameplay mechanics, making it difficult to jump from one platform to another. It had full motion video backgrounds, I believe, which made it look very appealing, which may have helped sell it just thanks to its graphics. In the UK, the host of a video game TV show called Bad Influence was video captured and put into the game, but he was later dropped before it was released, maybe down to it not being sold in the UK, who knows. The Amiga version used the sprites of the Sega CD version and had a variation of the levels, adding 2 more as well. It didn't have the FMV style backgrounds and kept the traditional style of platform elements. To be honest, it probably plays a lot better than the Sega CD version. I'd say give the Mega Drive or Super Nintendo versions a go if you are intrigued to play one of the many versions available. As soon as Dracula starts, you are instantly pulled into the picture with its fantastic visuals. It continues to grip you and keep you in awe of the photography and direction to the very end. Because of Coppola's decision to use traditional methods of effects in favour of current technology, the film stands the test of time. It hasn't aged. There's the odd effect where it clearly looks like a miniature, but that's part of the charm of it. You don't look at it and go, whoa, that's a bad effect. So many films during the early 90s, heck, even the later part of that decade, you looked at the CGI and it was crap and unrealistic. Once you are aware of how they achieved many of the visual effects in the film, I think you come away with a stronger respect for it. I love all the shadow effects of Dracula as he first meets Jonathan. There's a great moment where he reveals he will be marrying Mina, and the shadow attempts to strangle him. I personally think Gary Oldman's interpretation of Dracula is the best for me. There have been so many actors who have played the character, and they have all really given a similar interpretation over the years, even more recently with films like Van Helsing. The Count just feels like a comical villain. Dracula in this movie is kind of played like a fallen angel. He was an honourable person and a great man of his time, who felt betrayed by God and wanted revenge. It's a sad tale of a man who is heartbroken and lost the love of his life. You actually care about him despite what he does to his victims throughout the film. You know he's a good man deep down inside, a bit like Darth Vader. By the end, when he just barely makes it to the castle, he is given his last rites by Mina and finds peace. It's a sad end, but also a happy one because he is forgiven and ascends to heaven to be with his wife. Adapting a fictional story from the late 1800s can be a difficult challenge because generally they're not written in a linear fictional format. The story is told through diary entries, letters and ship logs, very much like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The story is told from numerous individuals' point of views and observations, never from a fly-on-the-wall perspective. Its narrative structure is totally different to how a film is played out. The film makes a great effort to include moments where the characters are writing in their diaries to explain what's happening, and the mix of the journals with the film's narrative structure blends really well. You'd be very surprised how much from the book is in the film. James Hart, I think, has done a very faithful adaptation. There are always going to be inconsistent moments with translation of existing material for a film. It happens all the time when books are put on the big screen. Francis even lets some of the actors give their own input into certain scenes. He even said if there was a scene missing in the script from the book, let him know and the writer would include it. The biggest problem with the film is Keanu Reeves, and to a less extent Winona Ryder. They both struggle with doing the English accent, Keanu especially. In all of his scenes he is embarrassingly bad. For some critics it kind of ruined the film for them. His bad performance takes you out of the moment and leaves you laughing or just wincing every time he speaks. You kind of expect him to say dude or whoa after he finishes every line. I don't know what really compelled Francis Coppola to cast him. I presume to maybe appeal to teenagers at the time. He and Winona were both rising stars, and having them could increase box office takings. Winona does far better but still stumbles here and there with the dialogue, but she has a more difficult task of showing more emotions, and the scenes are definitely more demanding of her. To be honest, both were miscast. If they had chosen English actors, or even say an American who could do the accent successfully, I think it would have helped the movie a lot, because there is so much good stuff in the film. Their performances bring the movie down a level. You never find out why Dracula is buying property in London, even though the character Jonathan asks him, but he is never given an answer, and you never find out. He only seems to travel there because he notices the photo of Mina. Also, why does he choose to look old in Transylvania but appears younger in London? If he has the power to look young, then why doesn't he do it all the time? I suppose he gained more power because he ate the entire crew on the way over to England. If that isn't the case, then I probably wouldn't want to walk around all the time with my hair looking like a giant arse.
Do you notice anything strange?
Yeah, his hairdo looks so queer.
I heard that. He was a boy.
The ending is a little disappointing and anticlimactic. The scene of Dracula finally passing away is emotional and effective, but before that it's a bit of a letdown, and everything happens all very quickly as Dracula finally gets to his castle. I suppose I always kind of wanted more from this sequence, maybe an extended confrontation between Van Helsing and Dracula perhaps. Bram Stoker's Dracula is certainly not a perfect movie, but despite its shortcomings, with its very questionable choice of casting, minor levels of camp, and issues with the end which I just highlighted, it's still a very good movie. The effects, the music, the makeup, the direction by Coppola, and Gary Oldman's incredible performance as Dracula, it's hard not to be impressed by it. The strongest aspect of the film is the romantic element. It's what keeps me returning to it, and of course its beautiful art direction. I know there are a number of people out there that don't really like the movie, but I hope once you realise what Coppola was trying to do, you'll become more aware of the hard efforts behind the scenes of the production, and you will gain more appreciation for it.
We have learned something much. Dracula fears us. He fears time. For if not, why does he hurry so?
He is calm.
How do you know?
He speaks to me.
He has a strong mind connection to you. His heart was strong enough to survive the grave.
You admire him.
Yeah. He was in life a most remarkable man. His mind was great and powerful, but greater is the necessity to stamp him out and destroy him utterly.
Doctor, I know that I am becoming like him.
Your salvation is his destruction.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find more retrospective reviews by clicking on these videos. If you want to watch my upcoming reviews early before they go live on YouTube, you can support me through Patreon. Don't forget the poster designed by my talented artist Peter Bruce, celebrating 100 retrospectives, is still available to purchase. We ship worldwide and postage is affordable.